Hello everyone, I'm Jim and it's my job to provide fast, effective relief from the heartburn of people problems. This video is an update on the furlough scheme. It's been all over the news and there's lots of articles about it, but there are some changes happening around about now, some important dates to bear in mind. So as of today, 15th of June 2020, this is the current situation. Okay, from the 1st of July, if you're not already in the furlough scheme, you won't be able to join. So if you're an employer and you want to join the furlough scheme and start using it, and you're not using it already, unfortunately, that's not going to be available to you. If you have been using the furlough scheme and you want to add employees to it, unfortunately, you've probably missed that boat as well. From the 1st of July, the furlough scheme will only continue to apply for employees that are already in the scheme and have been there for 3 weeks. That 3-week rule means that the effective date for getting somebody into the furlough scheme for the first time was the 10th of June, which of course is behind us. Now there may be some exceptions made for people that have been away from work for childcare reasons or parental leave, because by the time they come back they won't qualify under those rules, and it would be unfair to penalise them. So there will be some special exceptions and we'll look at those special cases a little later. Otherwise, for July marks the start of the part-time working, which means that you'll be able to bring people back to work, either full-time or part-time. If you're bringing them back part-time, the government will continue to pay any furlough claims for hours that they're not working, from their normal hours, obviously. And the terms of the payment remains the same, which is that the government will pay up to £2,500 of their salary, plus national insurance contributions, employers' national insurance contributions, and the pension. But this changes in August. In August, the employer will need to start paying for national insurance contributions and pensions contributions, but the government will still cover 80% of the employee's salary up to that 2,500 cap. This changes again in September. In September, the government will start covering 70%, and the employer will have to start covering the remaining 10% of that overall 80%. Now, so far, if the government covers the 80%, there was no rule saying that the employer must make up the balance 20% of the employee's salary. Would have been a nice thing to do, but under the circumstances, that's okay. At least they're getting 80%. When September rolls around, employers will have to make up 10% of that 80%, with the government doing the other 70%. And if you don't make up that 10%, then you won't get the 70% back from the government. This changes again in October. In October, it's going to be 60% from the government, with 20% being made up by the employer. So those are some important things to bear in mind for your plans. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to this reduced payment from the government of 70% and then 60%, it gets a little bit more complicated because also the cap is reducing. So in August, the government will pay 70% of the employee's wages for the time that they're on furlough, that is, but up to a reduced cap of £2,187.50. And you as the employer would have to make up the difference between what the government pays and what the employee gets at 80% of their salary, or 2,500, whichever is lower. And then in September, the government will pay the 60%, as I said, but that's up to a reduced cap of £1,875. And again, you will have to make up the difference, which will be 20% to get to 80% of their salary, or 2,500, whichever is lower. The point being that the employee who's getting either 2,500 or 80% of their salary, they don't see a change. They still get the same amount each month. The difference is that the government will contribute less to it, and you have to make up the difference between what the government contributes and the 80% or 2,500, whichever is lower for the employee. It's a little bit complicated, isn't it? But if you think about it, hopefully it'll all make a bit of sense. If you need some help understanding it, just get in touch. Maybe I can explain it for you. Right, what's next? If you want to bring people back to work, It's important to give them a little bit of notice so that they can prepare for that. It would not be reasonable to call someone up and say, I need you back tomorrow, you must come, drop everything, because that would be difficult for most people to do just at the drop of a hat. Now, there's no rules or law about this, but the general consensus is that you should give someone at least 48 hours notice that you're requiring them to come back to work, whether that's part-time or full-time. You should also confirm with them on what basis you're bringing them back, how many hours, and so on and so forth. But what do you do if somebody says they don't want to come back? Well, you have to consider that case on its merits. If the individual has a genuine concern, if they believe that there is a clear and imminent threat to their health and safety by coming back, for example, they are in a vulnerable group or they live with someone who is very vulnerable, then you need to consider what you can do about that. Now, generally, and I've said this in a previous video, my advice to all employers is that you should do a risk assessment to understand what the potential health and safety impact is, and then look at what measures you need to put into place to make the workplace as safe as possible for your employees, whether that's personal protective equipment, sort of rearranging the workplace to try and maintain safe distancing, that sort of thing. Once you've done all of that, then it just remains to evaluate the issue that the employee has. Again, if they've got a reasonable and genuine belief that they are in clear and imminent danger from returning to work, then your options are, if you can afford to do so, you can keep them on furlough a little longer, but given the fact that you're going to have to start paying for people from August onwards, that's going to be a little bit harder to swallow, perhaps. The other things you can look at are unpaid leave, or getting them to use up their accrued but unused paid holiday. If, on the other hand, the workplace is safe or as safe as you can reasonably make it, and you don't believe there is a substantial risk to the individual and they're not in a vulnerable group and so on, then yes, you're within your rights to require them to return to work. And if they don't, that is potentially a disciplinary issue. You do need to look at each situation on a case-by-case basis. So if you find yourself in a situation where someone is not returning to work, but you have got work for them to do, and you're not convinced that their reasons for not returning to work are genuine, give me a shout. I'm sure I'll be happy to look at that situation for you and give you some advice. The advantage of being able to bring people back part-time from the 1st of July is that it gives you as an employer the opportunity to start to get the wheels turning again, but without necessarily having enough work there to bring people back full-time. This is a good thing. I expect it's going to take a while for some businesses to get back to the levels of cash flow that they had prior to the lockdown, unfortunately. Another consideration, though, is going to be the ongoing costs of maintaining this workforce as the government starts to shave back its level of support, but you're still waiting for business to get back to its earlier levels. This unfortunately means we have to consider the possibility of redundancies. Now, if you find yourself in a position where you might have to start looking at reducing the size of your workforce because you simply can no longer afford to keep everybody on, that's something you can do. You are able to start a redundancy process whilst people are on furlough. And in fact, as far as a redundancy process is concerned, you would run it exactly the same way as you would have done before if you needed to. When it comes to redundancies, it's very important to follow a fair process. It's quite a well-established process. It's not a difficult one to follow. But if you do need to consider that, it's well worth giving me a shout and let me know, then maybe I can help you with that process too. Right, I think that's covering everything I need to say about the update to the furlough scheme. If there are more updates in the future, I shall of course keep you all posted. Now, if you've got any questions or feedback on this video, please feel free to comment below. If you liked it, please like it. If you didn't like it, feel free to dislike it. But if you are enjoying this content and you want to hear more of it, then please do hit the subscribe button because that will help me out a lot. Okay, that's it for now. Take care and I'll catch up with you soon. All right, cheers.